Alabama's syndicated news talk leader, Rightside Radio. Like the dude just said, we are indeed solid, conservative, and just plain right. Phil Williams here from the Rightside studio, going live. It is now 2:07 p.m. Thursday, July the 14th, and Copper's running that board. Hey, Copper, how you doing?
I'm doing well. How are you all over there?
We are good. We are good. And just rocking right along. And Boomer's in the studio. So yeah, hey Boomer, say hello, buddy.
Hey guys, how are y'all?
All right, everybody's good. All right, now that we're all happy and greeted each other, let's go. Copper, get that triple dipper sound effect ready. We'll go there first. But I'm gonna tell you, folks, we got some cool stuff today. Good friend of mine, a guy with a great service record, somebody who I served with for a number of years, Colonel Jim Hawkins, Colonel retired Jim Hawkins. At one point was one of the senior members of the staff for the Alabama National Guard. Well, I got real concerns about what's happening with vaccine mandates. What's it going to do to our National Guard? I'm going to talk about some of that and get Jim Hawkins on the phone with us at 3 o'clock today. So, yeah, those of y'all that are listening in at 1500, Colonel Jim Hawkins talking to Colonel Phil Williams, and we'll have a dialogue about what's going to happen with our Alabama National Guard because, folks, that's a big, hairy deal. A big, hairy deal, and I'll tell you more about that in a minute. And then at 3:30, one of my favorite times, those of y'all that are joining us for the first time this week from our new Birmingham audience, just know we got a thing we do every Thursday. It's called the Grand Council. The Grand Council, where I bring in two other of my brethren in talk radio. A guy named Jeff Poor down on the coastal regions and Dale Jackson from up in Huntsville. And we sit there and ping each other with questions, see how we do. We don't always agree, but we always love each other when it's over. We call it the Grand Council. That'll be today at 3:30. In the meantime, I still got a triple dipper full of stuff. So, Copper, hit it.
The Triple Dipper. 3 stories you've got to know.
That's right, the Triple Dipper. 3 stories, 3 themes, if you will, that we're going to run today's show on. Number 1, I'm calling it Fielding the Force. Yeah, so military readiness, where are we at? There's a lot of you in this audience that are veterans. There's a whole lot of people, too, that are also working in some capacity or another, whether it be the Air Guard station out at the Birmingham Airport or up north at Redstone Arsenal or at Anniston Army Depot. We got a lot of military communities in this listening audience, and on top of that, we have a ton of veterans. Number 1 on the Triple Dipper, I'm calling it Fielding the Force. What is Biden doing to our military readiness? We'll talk about that. Number 2, who's on Biden's team? You know, you don't hear about this. Every once in a while you get a glimmer. But have you ever stopped to think about who's on the team? Like, who are these people as a whole? Think about them all at one time, not just every once in a while there's Buttigieg, every once in a while there's, Kamala Harris. Who are these people as a whole? What's this team look like? I got some stuff's going to curl your hair. So that's number 2 on the Triple Dipper. Who's on Biden's team? And then number 3, Bama's Bidenomics. We're going to talk about how 9.1% inflation is hitting Alabama, and just talk about Bama's Bidenomics, number 3 on the Triple Dipper. But in the meantime, those of you that are still new to the show, let me just tell you, every day I start the show after I greet folks, after we spend some time talking about what's going to be in the show, I have an opening monologue. We call it the Rightside Way. And so without further ado, let me just ask you this. The Charge of the Light Brigade. You ever read it? It's a narrative poem that was published in the 1850s, written by Alfred Lord Tennyson. Cannons to the left of them, cannons to the right of them, cannons in front of them, volleyed and thundered. You may have heard this. It's a famous poem where the line comes, we get that same line that everybody knows. It says, "There is not to reason why, there is but to do or die. Into the valley of death rode the 600. But it was way more than a poem. The Charge of the Light Brigade was written just 6 weeks after a scandalous defeat of the British Light Brigade of Cavalry in the Battle of Balaclava in the Boer War in 1854. It's a case study in recklessness, disjointed leadership, and poor communication. The British were initially supposed to charge one defensive position, but multiple factors relating to poor decision-making caused them to veer into another target, one that was heavily defended and well entrenched, and they charged into what became known as the Valley of Death. Over 600 troopers, which were lightly armed, hence the name the Light Brigade. They had a heavy brigade and a light brigade. Over 600 troopers, lightly armed, built for speed more than sustained battle. There were warnings that were tried to be given to them at the last second, but as history would dictate, the command, in Tennyson's words, had blundered. a 3/4 mile long charge into a heavily defended valley in which the opposing force held staggering numbers by comparison. The opposition had 20 battalions of dug-in infantry supported by 50 artillery pieces, which blasted the light brigade as they charged. The opposition held their ground, gave no quarter, sending withering fire from three sides to rain down on the ranks of the light brigade, which devastated their force during the charge. Some of them made it to the target, but they were unable to sustain the fight, and they quickly had to withdraw to avoid complete annihilation. One war correspondent who was present at the time said the light brigade was wiped out, quote, by their own rashness and the brutality of a ferocious enemy. In the end, the light brigade was not completely destroyed, but they were no longer combat effective. Of the 600 men or so who entered the Valley of Death, 118 were killed, 127 wounded, 60 were taken prisoner. In the end, there were only 195 men, less than 1/3 of their original combat power, that could take the field on horse. The opposing force is said to have thought the British cavalrymen were drunk because of the futility of the charge. A French marshal who viewed the battle was quoted to say, quote, "It is magnificent, but it is not war, it is madness." And to this day, the charge of the Light Brigade remains a case study for modern historians of what can go wrong when accurate military intelligence is lacking and communications are poor and orders are unclear. So why am I telling you this? You know, I always have a point here. My monologues always have a point. Well, my point today is that many conservatives see the modern cultural landscape and the level of wokeness being thrust on us from all sides, and they imagine in some way that we as conservatives, that we're the Light Brigade, doing all that we can with the odds stacked against us and riding bravely but despairingly into the breach. Well, I'm here to tell you it's just the opposite. The conservative position on the cultural battlefield is actually the well-entrenched superior force in both numbers and capabilities. Liberals are the ones that are riding recklessly into the valley against overwhelming odds. Now, my wife Charlene has a saying that comes out periodically when we talk about modern culture. Referring to conservatives, she has a habit of saying, well, there's more of us than there are of them. And she's right. Think about it. There's more of us than there are of them. Take heart with that. Liberal progressives would have us believe that somehow they are in the majority. And the conservatives are like a bunch of old school has-beens clinging to their Bibles and guns, but not at all. The principles of conservatism, like free markets and strong families and low taxation and limited government, they are still very much in the mainstream. Look at a map of the United States that is colored for the traditional red and blue of the right and left sides of politics. The vast majority of this nation is red, and for good reason, because the vast majority of this nation does not cotton to the notions being touted by liberal progressives. Make no mistake at all. Just like the Light Brigade, the liberal progressives of this nation are a fighting force in the policy arena. They are not to be underestimated, but they are also not to be feared. They are far more of us than there are of them. But it's more than just numbers. It's our position, our capabilities, the fact that we are, in a sense, a far better equipped force as conservatives. The positions taken by the left are often ridiculous. They may gain ground in the beginning because they yell and scream a lot, but they seldom have staying power. Think about it. They cannot hold ground in the long term. Why do I say that? I mean, consider the weapons they have in their arsenal, right? I mean, how long can they really sustain the argument that a man can get pregnant? Really? We hold the high ground on that one, and we should never give it up. Just look at the foolishness being perpetrated even this week in the U.S. Senate on that very topic. Or how about the soft-on-crime stance taken by so many liberal DAs? The American public will not long suffer a fool who claims to want a job to protect them, only to choose not to protect and defend those who pay a salary. Recall efforts are underway right now to send some of those liberal DAs packing. How about vaccine mandates on the private sector? Well, that died a quick death in the courts because liberals, they just couldn't understand that government simply can't do what it wants with impunity. And the courts agreed because we had the high ground. Or how about this, the fight for the unborn? Conservatives stayed in the trenches for 50 years fighting for children in the womb. 50 years. But in the end, we won. And even some Democrats are now beginning to hear the amazingly awful rhetoric coming out of those who worshiped at the feet of abortion, and they're recognizing the futility of that argument. What I'm saying is this. We own the high ground as conservatives. We are not the ill-equipped, poorly led light cavalry charging into the valley of death. We are the ones who have the sustainable positions on the high ground. We are, as conservatives, the ones who can defend our positions because they are eminently more defendable. Conservatives just need to make sure they don't allow the screeching and charging of this liberal rabble to spook us off our positions. We are winning now, and I believe that we will win in the end. And like Charlene says, in this valley, there's more of us than there are of them. And that's a wrap for the Right Side Way. Well, there you have it. There you have it. I am telling you right now, you're on the winning team, conservatives. Do not think for a second that we are the light brigade rushing headlong into a futile offense. No, just the opposite. We're the well-trained, highly defendable positions on the high ground. We've got this fight. Just stay in it. Phil Williams, Right Side Radio. Y'all stay tuned. We'll be right back.
Get your free consultation. 256-929-PAIN. That's 256-929-PAIN. One more time. 256-929-PAIN.
We are back. Right Side Radio. Phil Williams sitting here in the new studio for Right Side Radio. Solid, conservative, and just plain right. Well, hey, listen, by the way, I got to tell you, and I really appreciate it when I get feedback. I got some immediate feedback on that last monologue. Thank you to Allie, who said she needed to hear that today. You are welcome, my friend, and I appreciate what you've done. Allie has an amazing story about how she spent time with the troops for 3 years in Baghdad. So that's a very cool one. Our Birmingham audience needs to meet her sometime soon. By the way, I'll just go ahead and leave the phone lines open for a bit. If you want to call in, we'll be glad to take it. Start the show off by hearing what folks have to say. If you're new in the Birmingham audience, just know this. We are going to be doing this every day starting at 2 o'clock. And Rightside Radio, we love interaction with the audience, so we'd love to hear what you have to say. You got thoughts on that? Do you think that? Do you agree? Are we the lightly defended cavalry rushing headlong into battle against overwhelming odds, or is it us that hold the high ground? I think it's us that hold the high ground. We just got to stay in the trenches and keep the fight going. That's my thought. But yeah, we'll take those calls if you want to. 866-494-9866. And with all the changes going on with Rightside Radio, let me just tell you, coming up here probably next week, I would imagine. What do you think, Boomer? Next week on the new phone numbers? When are we going to publish those? Oh, I'm sorry. Boomer, your microphone is off, and that is my fault.
Yeah, next week.
Next week?
Yes.
We got, what's that number going to be? I mean, do you have it with you?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'll get it for you.
All right. We got a brand new 800. I tell you what, we might want to confuse might not going to confuse the audience right now. That's just
good idea.
In fact, let me rephrase that. We might not want to confuse Phil right now because
or me.
All right. 866-494-9866. That's the number for today. I got one caller calling in right now. So Copper, you highlight his name when you're good to go and I'll take it. Yeah, line 5, Richard from Madison. Richard, how you doing today?
Couldn't be better. Outside working on the yard, just having a great time, but and enjoying to listen to your show. And I'm really glad you're on an afternoon. So I really enjoy your show, and I love your monologues. And today's really spoke to my heart because, like you said, we're not the ones that are lightly armored. We're the only ones that really have sustainable life on our side.
Absolutely.
Versus the mutilation and the abortion killing that the left has.
Yeah.
If we just stay true to our beliefs, you were 100% right on target.
Well, thank you, my brother. I appreciate that, and yeah, thanks for being a part of the audience. And I agree totally.
Keep up the great work, and I'll always be part of your audience. Thank you so much.
That's a right side ruffian if I ever heard one, right there. Richard, thanks very much. Yeah, folks, those of y'all new in Birmingham, I keep saying if you're new in Birmingham, I'll quit saying that sometime soon. But the bottom line is, our audience a lot of times calls themselves right side ruffians. We even have T-shirts, and I think pretty soon we're going to give away some T-shirts, so keep that in mind. But yeah, thank you, Richard. That was a great call. You got something to say? You want to say it? We got a few minutes here. We'll take that. But I'll tell you, I was starting to say a moment ago about some of the changes for Rightside. This is an honor, and I don't say that lightly. It is an honor to have this opportunity to be in front of you every day. Did not see this coming. All right, and when I say that, it's like, oh, Phil, how long you been doing radio? Not very long. Just, I look at it and go, how did this happen, God? But, it's a kick. And I'm having the best time doing this. And Charlene and I have talked about it like, okay, how did this happen? So for those of y'all that don't know me, let me just give you a little background. My eclectic resume, a lot of years of military service, retired as a colonel, airborne ranger, did all those things, had tours in Iraq and Afghanistan. That's a piece of the thread of my resume. But the other parts of this is, and a lot of that time was spent Guard and Reserve. And so the other side of my life, very often, I spent, 10 years full-time working with kids in full-time ministry and counseling. So there's that. Through a ministry called Young Life is where I spent a lot of years on staff. And then after that, I felt like I was supposed to go to law school late in life. So in my 30s, I went to law school. Now I'm deep into my 50s, I like to say. And here I've been practicing law now for 20 years, so I'm still a practicing attorney. And then on top of that, I ran for office in 2010, spent 2 terms, 8 years in the Alabama State Senate, representing part of Northeast Alabama in Senate District 10. That was an honor that I loved being a part of. But I just knew that it was not mine to own. I wasn't going to be there long. I'm a firm believer in term limits. And so after 2 terms, I just, Charlene and I talked about it and thought, this is where we stop. And so I got out not knowing what was next. And then lo and behold, this opportunity arose. The Alabama Policy Institute, a very conservative think tank type organization, an advocacy organization for conservative principles, they called me and said, hey, what are you doing with your time? And I'm waiting to find out what God wants to do. Well, next thing I know, I'm on staff, as well as practicing law, I'm on staff with the Alabama Policy Institute, still working for all the things that I believe in, but now from the outside of politics looking in as opposed to being inside. Well, that was cool. But because of that, it branched off. I mean, it's amazing what God does. You look back at the threads of your life and you go, oh, now that makes sense. I'm not sure all of my life makes sense, but I can see where it all began to thread together. Well, somewhere in the midst of doing that work with the Alabama Policy Institute, it expanded my territory, I guess you'd say. And next thing I know, instead of giving speeches within my district and sometimes in Montgomery, I'm giving speeches all over the state. I'm doing the occasional radio appearance because whenever they needed somebody to do background commentary, they'd call the Policy Institute. And, you know, a lot of times I wound up being the guy that did it. And then next thing I know, I'm doing radio. And the next thing I know, I'm being asked once in a while, hey, man, my radio show host is going to be gone this week on vacation. Can you substitute for him? I don't know. Can I? And so I just did and had the best time doing it. Last year, I got a call from my friend Dale Jackson, who's going to be on the air with us here during the Grand Council at 3:30. Dale's a program director for Cumulus Broadcasting Station WVNN out of Huntsville. He calls me out of the blue and he goes, hey, man, Rush Limbaugh died. And I said, yeah, you doing all right? He goes, well, yeah, but I got to fill 3 hours. And I said, okay. I'm just sitting there thinking, where's this going? And next thing I know, we're building Rightside Radio. Did not see this coming, but for the last year, I have had the honor of being on the air every day for 5 days a week. It has been a complete pivot in our life with Charlene and I. My shtick is I typically get up early in the morning. This morning by around 5:30, I began working on the show. I spend 2 to 3 hours every day prepping for a 3-hour radio show. But that's just because that's what I just feel like I'm supposed to do. And I love doing it. So when you hear me rattle paper in the microphone, it's stuff that I've resourced early in the morning or a monologue that I wrote at some point before the show started. And on top of that, there's other things in my life. I mean, Lord, Charlene and I have been married 35 years. We got great grown kids. We got grandkids. We got a house. We got all the things. And now we got this pivot in life where we said, hey, why don't we just do radio every single day? And I wouldn't trade it for the world. Gives me a chance to be with you guys. And I'm telling you, it's an honor. This show is doing what it's doing because of y'all, not because of me. And I'm loving it. And all those different facets of my life, they all get to kick in periodically. Very cool. All right, folks, Right Side Radio. Honored to be with you. Solid, conservative, just plain right. Y'all stand by. We'll be right back.
This is News Talk 770 AM, 92.5 FM, WVNN. News starts now.
o'clock, 7:70 a.m. Well, I just jumped right in it, Copper. I just went right back to my old habits. I just jumped right in with feet first. No. Alabama syndicated news talk leader, Rightside Radio, where Phil has been saying the same thing every day for a year and is struggling to get out of his habits. Okay, anyway, we're back, Rightside Radio. And yes, we are still solid, conservative, and just plain right. Yeah, I got a caller on line, too, that's held on during the break, so thank you for that. And Steve from Huntsville, how you doing, man?
Hey, guy. Great. Congratulations. I want to say thank you for the show. It's certainly all right to honk your horn because you're doing such a great job, such a service. Thanks for your service and everything you bring to the show. It's quite an interesting mix of your talents and skills that you bring to bear and your perspective. So thank you. Thanks for the staff. Thanks for the guests that you have. But I want to bring up one little interesting topic that I have discovered recently.
Yeah, man. Thank you, by the way.
Oh, yeah. And the T-shirt. Man, that's a great T-shirt. You sent me a T-shirt a little while back, and I love it.
Good deal.
T-shirt.
Good deal. Thank you for those compliments, by the way. And this is not the Phil Williams show. I mean, I didn't even feel good about naming it that. This is really, it's Rightside Radio. Somebody else could take the mic and the show could still go on. But thank you very much.
You're welcome. Keep it up. Just keep it up. Yeah, something I discovered recently, and I'll say this to all fellow conservative folks: we've been beat down and frowned on, and just made fun of and demonized for so long. We kind of don't want to talk about it sometimes. We don't want to bring it up. We just carry it around. But I have discovered recently, being an old retired guy, a former civil servant, you can talk about this stuff if you're careful for your audience and you just bring. It's easy now with the economy and shortages and all that stuff to bring things up in this sorry state of affairs we found ourselves in. There are a lot of people that feel like we do. They will talk to you if you'll just kind of broach the subject and don't be afraid to make a comment or two. And boy, people will open up. It's amazing how often, how many times people will open up about what's bothering them in our beautiful country today.
Man, you are so right.
Talk it up, folks.
You are so right. In fact, it's funny, Steve, you said that because I literally my wife, I mentioned in my monologue that my wife always says there's more of us than there are of them. But she just texted me and said, but I also say if they don't speak up, it doesn't matter. And it's exactly on point what you just said.
Well, we're so used to the vocal ones out there, and we have a lot of power with our voice. And when we're right, how can you argue? We're accurate. We're correct. We're not making stuff up. We've got facts behind what we say.
Yeah.
It's not the feelings. Oh, I feel that. Oh, my feelings are such and such. We've got the facts, and we can be calm and clear-headed about presenting them and talk to folks. It's okay.
Good stuff,
it's okay.
Man. Hey, Steve, what a great phone call. Thanks for being a part of the audience. You continue to be a right side ruffian. We appreciate you. And you have a great day, bud.
I am a ruffian.
You are
yes,
indeed. All right. Thanks, man. All right. Listen, folks, let me jump into number one of the what a great call, by the way. How do you get away from the fact that we have the coolest audience? Boomer, you're still getting used to our audience, but we have absolutely the coolest audience in the world. I'm just telling you.
I am getting used to them in here, but I have loved listening to them when I've been listening to your show.
Yeah, well, and they never cease to amaze. I mean, I'm pretty sure that like a bunch of my audience could just host this show and probably do a darn good job at it.
They're pretty incredible.
Yeah, they are indeed. All right, man. Hey, listen, I'm going to jump into number one of the Triple Dipper. I'm calling it Fielding the Force. So go with me on this. If you look around right now, the state of military readiness, it's drawing some attention from those who pay attention to, geopolitical affairs with military strategy built in. It's getting some attention because the Biden administration is doing more right now to harm military readiness than perhaps we've ever seen. I do not want to go back to the days of what my dad used to call the hollow army. Those of y'all that don't know me, I'm generational Army. My grandfather was a retired general. He was post commander at Redstone Arsenal when I was young. World War II veteran, served all the way up through Vietnam. And then my dad, career Army officer also, 2 tours in Vietnam. And then myself, and we got other family members on active duty now. So I caught a story this morning that really got my attention. And it was a good story. Story on military.com. Military.com dated yesterday Space Command has moved to Space Command's move to Alabama clears an environmental hurdle nearing final approval. So here's the bottom line. It got my attention this morning that we are still seeing good things happening. I don't want to pretend they're not. Like, for instance, in this story on military.com, it says an environmental review has found no problems with the proposed Huntsville site for a new U.S. Space Command headquarters, clearing what could be the last major official hurdle for the new command to move to Alabama, our own U.S. Senator Tommy Tuberville said in a press conference yesterday. So now they have this public comment period, and they're going to be doing things. Listen, folks, here's what that's going to do for Alabama. I mean, right now we're a state that down yonder in the Wiregrass, we got Fort Rucker. That's where every Army aviator is trained. We've got the Air War College and all the other assets, plus an entire air wing of F-16s. No, I take it back. They're F-35s, I believe, at Maxwell Air Force Base. And then we also have, oh, by the way, Redstone Arsenal, the home of Material Command, the home for missile defense, centerpiece of a lot of defense contracting. Added to it now, they've put the FBI training center there, soon to have Space Command. We also have, by the way, have a very robust National Guard, which I'll get to in a minute. And then we have the Anniston Army Depot. Did you know that almost every vehicle that was damaged requiring stateside repairs in the war had to come back to Anniston Army Depot to be repaired? It's pretty cool when you stop and think about it. Well, add to all of that now, we're looking at, according to this article, 1,800 headquarters staff and their families could move to Huntsville in the near future, building a new headquarters on the Arsenal on a 38,000-acre base, which is already home to 5 military command headquarters and also the expanding FBI Management and Training Center. Alabama is looking at a 464,000 square foot headquarters building with a 402,000 square foot parking lot, security, child care, the ability to absorb things. It's going to have a major impact on the economy, but it's also because we are a military-friendly state. We're a place that has quality of life. We're a place that values our veterans. We have one of the highest per capita populations of veterans within the ranks, within the population of Alabama. And yet, in the midst of all that, we're looking at an administration in D.C. that still has an ability, obviously, to impact us. I mean, to some degree, you realize they should. That's what they were elected to do, whether you like them or not. They were elected to be able to influence public policy. They won the election, they say. I got problems with that election, but nonetheless, he's in office. I can't do much about the fact that Biden's administration's in office now, and what they're doing to the U.S. military impacts us, even as a military-friendly state, the future home of an entire branch of the service, Space Command. We're looking at, wow, what else is going to happen with the U.S. military? Well, a story on Breitbart got my attention following that one. So Breitbart dated yesterday again. More than 260,000 troops are not fully vaccinated, many of which now face discharge under the Biden administration's mandate. 260,000. That's 13% of our overall 2.1 million total force. That's Army, Navy, Air Force, the Marine Corps, which is a sub of the Navy. Folks, that's a huge deal, but you're adding to the fact that the current state of affairs with the commander-in-chief and the policies he's putting into the military right now are driving recruiting down to record lows. We have not seen recruiting down this far since the end of the draft in 1972-73, which began the period called the hollow military. My dad referred to it as a hollow army because that's what he was in. And he talked about how disjointed it felt, and you just did your job and hoped things were going to get better. Well, I do want to remind you with a sense of encouragement that we came out of Vietnam and we got rid of the draft. We entered into the period under the Carter era of what we call the hollow military. But in the early 80s, we had the Panama invasion. We had the Grenada invasion. 9-10 years after that, we had Desert Storm, where we proved that the American military could still do an amazing amount of work in a short amount of time. We literally have seen the American military come back from the hollow period And what I'm concerned about is we're about to go hollow for a while and then have to rebuild. 260,000 troops, according to the Department of Defense website, are still not in compliance with Secretary of Defense Lloyd Austin's August 2021 mandate that they all be vaccinated with 2 doses. And that does not count the thousands who have not taken any doses, apparently. Only about 20,000 of the more than 260,000 have received a temporary or permanent exemption. So what we're looking at here is a situation where literally 13% of our force could be relegated to non-deployable status at the same time that we're seeing recruiting literally at only 40% of the milestones they need to make. In the middle of that, the Army National Guard and Army Reserve recently acknowledged that as many as 60,000 soldiers, that's 12% of the total Army National Guard and Reserve, 60,000 soldiers are not fully vaccinated. And a new directive came out that says that they will not receive pay and benefits for any duty they perform. Folks, I'm telling you, this is a dire time. We're going to come back from this break. Let's go ahead and take a break, Copper. We'll come back from this break. I want to sort of put that together and package it up for you a little bit more. And then top of the hour, a friend of mine, Colonel Jim Hawkins, who had a senior position within the Alabama National Guard. We're going to talk about what this is going to do to readiness just in Alabama alone. And folks, if you think that Alabama's National Guard is strong, wait till I tell you what all's in it that you might not be aware of. We have one of the most robust and elite National Guards in the entire nation. And right now, 18% of Alabama's National Guard, 18%, is on the chopping block. Phil Williams, Rightside Radio. We'll be right back.
Noon and Sunday mornings at 7, 8, and 9 for Your Retirement Matters.
Firm offers insurance services. Investment advisory services offered only by duly registered individuals through AE Wealth Management, LLC.
Alabama syndicated news talk leader, Rightside Radio. Phil Williams from the Rightside Studios here in local, state, national, all the issues, y'all. That's what I'm saying, and we handle it solid, conservative, and just plain right. So I'm in this section right now in the Triple Dipper I call Fielding the Force. What does it take to field a robust fighting force? Well, let me just pause for a minute and just jump back on that National Guard piece I had a moment ago. I spent a lot of years in the Alabama National Guard, and I'm going to tell you right now, you literally, Alabamians, you have one of the most elite National Guards in the nation. And let me just make sure that I describe that effectively for you. Because no longer, or this is not the old school National Guard. Not that there was ever anything wrong with it. I'm just saying there used to be a time and a place in sort of the military parlance where they were called the weekend warriors, and they had the lesser of the equipment. Not anymore. The Goldwater-Nichols Act changed some of that, but then you also have 9/11, which increased the operational tempo of the National Guard such that there is a mandate from D.C. now. National Guard Bureau has status. There is a member of the Joint Chiefs that is a National Guards general, and you also, by the way, have the fielding of equipment at Tier 1 levels, generally speaking, and they may not be first in line, but they get all the same stuff. And when you go down range, you can't tell anymore who's guard and who's not. Some of the finest people that I served with. Let me just tell you, my first tour was in Afghanistan. In the beginning of the war, on a small special operations team, I was in a remote location in Kunduz, Afghanistan, riding horses, growing a beard, the whole thing. And the guys that I was with, West Virginia National Guard Special Forces, 19th Special Forces Group, doing the deed. I got to Baghdad. When I first got to Baghdad in 2004, I was assigned to an infantry battalion out of the 1st Armored Division, active duty guys. Okay. You know what? 3 months later, they rotated out. You know who rotated in? A battalion of infantry from the Oregon National Guard, who were some of the finest soldiers I ever served with. Highly professional, highly competent, and highly decorated, by the way. I'm just telling you, the National Guard is a robust element. Right here in Alabama, let me tell you what you have in case you didn't know. I mean, especially if you've got somebody in your family who's thinking, man, I wish I could just, join the Guard or do something, but I don't want to just, I don't want to do something lightweight. No, I got news. Here in Alabama, there are only 2 National Guard Special Forces, that's Green Berets. There are only 2 National Guard Special Forces groups. One of them is the 20th Special Forces Group, which is headquartered right here in Alabama. I spent a lot of years in 20th Group. You want to jump out of an airplane? You want to be a Green Beret? You want to be a member of a Special Operations Support Battalion? You want to be a parachute rigger? All of those are right here in the Alabama National Guard. They have a group headquarters. They have a Special Operations Support Battalion. They have a line battalion of Green Berets at 1st Battalion of 20th. But on top of that, we also have 2 battalions of infantry. I commanded one of them. One of those has an airborne LURS company in it. That's a long-range surveillance. We have a battalion of artillery here in the Alabama National Guard. We have the only EOD group, Explosive Ordnance Disposal. The only bomb disposal group-level headquarters is in the Alabama National Guard. We have a Theater Sustainment Brigade, which is a 2-star general-level position. And that Theater Sustainment is actually a TSC. It's not a brigade. That TSC is literally assigned to NORTHCOM to be the logistics manager for NORTHCOM, which is the Homeland Defense in the Alabama National Guard. We have a chemical brigade. And in the Air National Guard, we have the 187th Fighter Wing, which traces its heritage back to the Red Tails of World War II, flying the F-16, I think it's the F-16C. But yeah, we have a KC-135 Air Refueling Tanker Wing based in Birmingham. Folks, and I didn't even name it all. We got military police. It's an extremely robust National Guard. And right now, it's on the chopping block. And right now, I'm concerned about what's going to happen when the next call for a 9/11 response happens. And I hope it doesn't, but you have to always be prepared. Do you know what it takes to get a 18 Delta Special Forces medic fully trained, especially in the National Guard? Because they carry all the same qualifications. They go to all the same schools. You don't have reserve component training for that stuff anymore. You go to all the active duty schools, you get highly qualified, and then you still have a civilian job where you have those skills that you bring to play as well. And yet right now, the Pentagon is not even bothering to respond. I don't know where Governor Ivey is on this. I know she doesn't like it, but she's not saying much about it. But she's about to lose 18% of her robust capacity to respond to hurricanes or to support national defense. She is the commander-in-chief of the Alabama National Guard when they're not in federal service. And I'm hearing nothing out of her right now. But then on top of that, I'm looking at Governor Youngkin out of Virginia. He and one of his congressmen just sent a letter 2 weeks ago. Yeah, 2 weeks ago. To Secretary of Defense Lloyd Austin, a governor of a state, asking for the secretary to please delay this impactful vaccine mandate discharge of their service members. And I'm just telling you right now, it's galling to me that to date there has been no response from the Secretary of Defense. They're moving forward with axing a huge percentage of our operational National Guard capacity. Folks, coming up next, right after this break, I'm going to bring a friend of mine on who knows this better than most. Retired Colonel Jim Hawkins spent a great deal of time as one of the senior members of Alabama's National Guard. He was also in charge of all the domestic operations related to hurricanes and disaster response. We'll see what he thinks. Phil Williams, Rightside Radio. Y'all stay tuned. We'll be right back.
You're listening live to Rightside Radio with Phil Williams. It's hard to go wrong when you're on the right side. Rightside Radio. Solid, conservative, and just plain right.
All right, Alabama syndicated news talk leader, Rightside Radio. Phil Williams sitting here in the Rightside studios. Local, state, national stuff, all the issues, we cover them. Solid, conservative, and just plain right. Hey, listen, I've got a friend, Jim Hawkins is coming on now. Jim currently serves as a senior principal for emergency management for Dynamis, which is based in Huntsville. He's got 30 years of leadership experience. The majority of that is as a green suiter in uniform with the Alabama National Guard. Jim was a full-timer. Last military assignment he had was the director of military support in the J357 for the National Guard headquarters in Montgomery. He coordinated, literally all of the civil support operations. You had a disaster relief issue, you had a hurricane, you had whatever. Jim was in the thick of it, usually running the jock. Extensive experience, a senior member of our Alabama National Guard, now retired though, but a good friend, Jim Hawkins. Colonel Jim Hawkins, how you doing, bud?
I'm well, Phil. Thanks for the introduction. How are you?
I'm good, man. I'm good. Well, listen, when I texted you back and forth, I was talking about the fact that I'm really concerned about the fact that our Alabama National Guard, which is a very robust and highly operational and active National Guard, is looking at almost an 18% potential loss because of the vaccine mandates. I wanted to get your perspective. What do you think that's going to do to readiness? What are you hearing from folks that are still there? I'd love to hear it.
Well, I hadn't heard the 18% number until you and I started talking about it, but that's a pretty big blow. So the Army Guard in Alabama, and you're right, it's a big guard. We're the fifth largest in the country, or we were when I retired. The Army Guard's at about 95% strength. The Air Guard's also about 95% strength. So if we take an 18% dip, you're looking at about 77% of assigned strength. The Army has some metrics that you can use to look at. You remember the old FM 101 -5-1? Had Army terms and graphics, and a unit that was at 70 to 84% strength was considered combat capable with deficiencies. So it's a reduced level. It's an amber unit. You got to be 85% or higher to be considered combat capable. So we'll definitely take a dip. If you look at the Heritage Foundation, which does an index of U.S. military strength, they consider a unit at 75 to 82% marginal. So
wow.
That's definitely going to reduce the capability. It's going to readiness is going to take a dip, and the ability to execute the missions will take a dip.
Yeah, and totally. And listen, so your time and where I first met you was when you were working the domestic operations group there in Montgomery and basically spearheading any efforts related to disaster relief. So the Guard has it's an operational Guard these days, highly deployable, highly capable, but yet always having the Homeland Defense and Homeland Support missions related to disaster relief and everything else that you helped coordinate. What are you looking at? If you were still there right now, what would your thoughts be in terms of being able to do disaster response?
Well, I'd be concerned because, the Guard has that unique dual mission. It has that federal mission to support ongoing federal operations around the world, but it also has that state mission to take care of things at home if there's a disaster or some kind of emergency. The federal mission takes priority. If there's a dip in Alabama Guard strength, other states can assist the U.S. Army with mobilizations to accomplish that mission. But if we take a dip here at home, where does that leave us? Because some percentage of the force is always either employed in a federal mission or preparing for a federal mission. So you never have 100% of the Guard available for a domestic response. In fact, we usually, when we activated a unit, you usually only got about 70% of that unit to deploy because of people are off at school or whatnot. So if you take another 18% off of that, you start to get into an area of concern about having the capability to do everything you need to do.
Well, yeah, and I tell you what gets me too, Jim, as I look at this, I heard that Secretary of Defense Lloyd Austin had said in a congressional briefing, I think it was House Armed Services he was talking to, and he told them he did not see the vaccine mandates having a total impact or a big impact on overall readiness. because, and he was quoting it just from a purely one over the world, here's the big numbers type level. But what happens, though, when you get into a unit like, for instance, the 20th Special Forces Group here in Alabama, or the Air Refueling Wing out of Birmingham? How long does it take to get somebody fully capable and trained to be a KC-135 air refueling boom operator to refuel F-16s in flight? I mean, what does it take? And if you lose too many of those, it's not just that your numbers are down, now your mission capability is completely down.
Well, that's exactly right. I mean, it takes quite a while to train just a basic soldier airman, but when you get into these specialists or these folks in the mid or upper ranks, it takes years, and you're talking millions of dollars expended to train those people, and they're not easy to replace. There's nothing that takes the place of that time that you'll have to get back. Yeah, back in December, the Army said for just the Army that they had 98% of their people vaccinated on active duty. But in the reserve force, the total force, it was only 83%. So I think a lot of times senior leaders like the secretary tend to focus on the active component and aren't really paying attention to the unique needs and requirements of the reserve component, particularly the National Guard and its mission to its state.
Well, yeah, and here we are coming into hurricane season. Where's? Let me ask you this. I don't know if you've got any contacts at NGB, National Guard Bureau, now in D.C. I'm sure you still got friends that work up there, but have you heard anything? I mean, is NGB going to bat on this thing, or are they sitting back going, well, should have got the shot? I mean, what's being said at the God's eye view here?
Well, I don't know anything official, but typically the Bureau follows the lead of the Pentagon. I mean, they don't have a lot of latitude in that. But what you are seeing is certain states that are taking a stand. The Adjutant General of Oklahoma, for instance, pushed back pretty hard with the support of his governor. But ultimately, because the National Guard is federally funded for the vast majority of its funding, the power of the purse will win out, and they'll be able to strong arm people into either getting the vaccine or being discharged. One bright note is the NDAA that the president signed back in December. Specifically stated that if anybody was discharged for refusing to take the vaccine, it had to be either honorable or general under honorable conditions. So at least they're not stripping people's benefits, but it's still a tragedy to drive so many dedicated soldiers, airmen, and in the active component, sailors and Marines out of the service because they don't want to take a shot. We all lived through anthrax. We all know people that got Guillain-Barré and other issues from the anthrax shot, and here we go again. Yeah, and it just feels needless. And you and I both know, and I'll say this readily, that I'm not anti-vax, but I'm definitely anti-mandate. But you and I both know that when you put on that green suit, that sometimes you not in some cases you lose some of your normal privileges, and you may have to get a shot you didn't want. But then again, this one feels very heavy-handed. It feels very arbitrary in a sense. And majority of the vaccine mandates have been shot down in the other capacities in which it's being implemented. The last remaining stand of the vaccine mandate is the military, it appears. Yes, it's unfortunate. And the pandemic, we've learned so much since the early days when when the vaccines and then the mandate came out. I really think it's time to sort of re-examine that. I mean, if you're a 20-year-old physically fit soldier, the risk of COVID to you is just not that high. So why run those soldiers off because they don't want to get a shot? Well, and then here's the other piece too that I've not heard discussed a whole lot, but it's going to have to be. How many of these soldiers are going to wind up being, put in a position of being discharged, have that on their record for that matter, and at the same time, whether it's honorable or not, they still, but then at the same time, they may have a commitment that they started a GI Bill, but they have to serve a certain amount. They may have benefits that they relied upon, like some of them. You can take advantage of TRICARE when you're a guardsman. If that was your family's insurance, then what? I just look at some of this and think, man, there's a pile on coming for some of these troops. No, that's absolutely right. There'll be a price beyond losing the privilege to serve. They're going to lose a lot of entitlements over this, and I find it particularly disturbing too that the DoD made a big deal about the ability to request exemptions and things like that, and they've approved, very, very few, virtually none. So that's all sort of smoke and mirrors.
You hearing anything out of Montgomery? What's Joint Force Headquarters saying? They got any fears or concerns that you know of?
Not that I am aware of. I'm just not down there as much, and it's been I just hit my 3-year anniversary of retiring back in May.
Dang.
And so I certainly keep my ear to the ground, but COVID's just something that people won't talk about much because it's such a hot button. You don't want to be that person. So the emotions that surround that discussion, whether it's masks or the vaccine or whatever, the people that are pro that are very pro, and the people that are against it are very against it. And I fall in the middle on the vaccine. I got it, but frankly, I wouldn't have got it if it hadn't been a requirement for me, probably.
Yeah, I get it. Well, I think what's going to wind up happening, Jim, is there going to be a bunch of folks who got in for all the right reasons, who got highly trained, and now they're going to be highly gone. And I would bet that some of those are going to become very vocal once they're out of uniform and have something they can say and they're allowed to say. I think we're going to start hearing from some people pretty soon if that happens.
Well, I think you're right. And what my hope is that we have an administration change, the mandate goes away, and some of those terrific service members are allowed to re-enlist. They're not given re-enlistment codes that bar them from getting back in and getting back to the business of defending the country or taking care of their state in an emergency.
Yeah, well, I agree, and I'm not going to be a bit surprised if we don't see, even after the 2022 midterms, without seeing a total change in the administration, if we could see Congress and the Senate change. I'm pretty sure there's going to be some Republican leadership that says, hey, by the way, if you were kicked out, we want you back. And I'm not going to be a bit surprised to see that happen. So anyway.
I agree with you.
Hey, Jim Hawkins, I appreciate you, man. As always, thanks for your many, many years of service, 3 decades plus, and for the time we spent together in Montgomery. But stay tuned, and we'll have you back on again sometime soon.
I'd appreciate that. I always enjoyed being here, and thanks for your service, my brother.
All right, man. Take care. All right, folks, that's Colonel Jim Hawkins, senior member of Alabama's National Guard. Had basically, he was the point man for everything domestic relief related. Highly skilled dude, and one of the best I've ever seen at running a staff. Just does a great job. Anyway, now in the civilian sector and able to talk. All right, listen, we're going to go ahead and move to the break. We'll come back. We'll finish up this segment, and then 3:30, you got to stay tuned. We're looking at the Grand Council. Phil Williams, Rightside Radio. Solid, conservative, just plain right. We'll be right back. wrap this up. All right. In case you, I'm looking at an article right now from Notre Dame University's. It's called the NDU Press. The Operational National Guard, it says, a unique and capable component of the Joint Force. I just want to make sure that you hear me say, it's not because I've been in the Guard or I have friends in the Guard or whatever else. It's because they are truly considered part of the operational force. It talks about the fact in this particular article that globalization, the rise of near-peer powers and regional actors and sociological changes and other things that are happening around the world create a lot of dynamics that are very complex. And in the middle of all that, we have to be aware that we have a lot of what's called major power competition. Now, this article I'm reading right now was written in 2017, 5 years ago. It was already talking 5 years ago about the fact that we're looking at states like Russia and China that are beginning to test their long-standing international borders and customs. I'm just telling you, 5 years ago we were aware that things were ramping up. Well, so here's the thing. As we move into the future, and this article points that out, the U.S. military is going to have to remain a vital and key instrument in maintaining our security and stability around the globe and here in the homeland. It's going to require a military that can rapidly surge. It's going to require a military that can protect our homeland from emerging threats. It's going to require a military that can work hand in hand with our allies, our partners, with other governments. And maintaining an operational National Guard, which is approximately 20% of our overall fighting force, is essential. So here we are, sitting 5 years ago knowing exactly that. Knowing full well that the warfighting effort since 9/11 could not have been sustained without an operational National Guard. And it says in here, too, that the National Guard has evolved into an operational warfighting organization designed with a balance of combat and enabling units that largely mirrors the active component. It's provided the joint force of the United States a capability to rapidly expand its power overseas. And in the homeland, of course, they have the mission of making sure the homeland defense is secure, because you can't just bring the 101st Airborne to Alabama when things go badly. You have to activate the National Guard under state law. It's actually the U.S. Code under Title 32 is where you control the National Guard. The U.S. Code under Title 10 is where you control the active duty. When a National Guardsman goes on active duty for a war, he or she is converted to a Title 10 status. Title 32 gives the governor the right to direct their own National Guard, to fill in the blanks when something bad happens, riots. I got called up for riot duty once. I've been called up for hurricane duty. And when Hurricane Katrina happened, it was the National Guard that showed up on the scene and brought all kinds of relief effort that couldn't be brought to bear by civilian authorities. Thousands of National Guard members are currently serving around the globe, even right now. For a period of time, and I think they still do, the 20th Special Forces Group based out of Alabama, a bunch of Green Berets in the reserve component here in Alabama, they had their own area of operations in the world. They were so robust that they were given their own area of operations. That's never been done before. The 167th Theater Sustainment Command, which is over in Anniston, it's never been done before that a reserve component, National Guard in this case, a reserve component Theater Sustainment Command has been given operational capacity to man the logistics of the NORTHCOM, that's the United States defense. If something goes bad, like a 9/11 again, your Alabama National Guard has the headquarters that is in charge of being the logistics hub for all of it. And as a result, that unit is what they call a multi-compo. It's one of the only units in the entire National Guard inventory, 50 states across, that's considered a multi-compo, meaning they have actual active duty folks that are assigned to this National Guard unit full-time. They're multi-composition. Well, listen, this can't go down overnight. It's one thing to see recruiting dip. It's another thing to see operational capacity dip. It's another thing to see robust deployments put a strain on the ranks. I get all that. That's kind of what they signed up for. It's another thing altogether to have an administration that blindly moves forward with a mandate that is not considered viable anymore. In the vast majority of the areas they tried to do the mandate, it failed. It was struck down by the courts. And I get it. I know. I had to push through with the anthrax thing, and somehow or another I avoided getting some of the anthrax shots. And then the Army said, you know what, this is a really bad idea, and it went away. Are they ever going to have the wherewithal to say, you know what, Dr. Fauci just said yesterday, apparently being vaccinated doesn't prevent you from getting it or from spreading it. So why are we doing this? Why are we taking young troopers who signed up for all the right reasons, looking for a means to support and defend their nation and their state, and just telling them overnight, you don't get paid anymore? Thanks for your service, Sergeant. Thanks for your service, Captain. Thanks for your service, Major. I have a friend who's a major that recently got out. He's a paratrooper. He had served admirably for 16 years. He was close to vesting in his retirement. He decided that he was going to get out because he knew that if he didn't get out, they would do something on his record that might prevent his ability to come back in later. He's hedging. He's hedging on the belief that what's going to wind up happening is this is not going to fly well, and after the 2022 midterms, we're going to see a sea change. And somebody's going to wake up, and they're going to say, what are we doing to the force? All right, listen, folks, that's it. We're going to move forward to this break. Coming back up, I may have a bit of a gaffe on the Grand Council, but I at least got Jeff Poor joining me. I know that. Dale Jackson, I hope so too. Phil Williams, Rightside Radio. Coming right back. Y'all stay tuned. we are back. Phil Williams, Rightside Radio, covering all of North Alabama. Solid, conservative, and just plain right. That's how we roll here on Rightside Radio. Well, all right, we're going to start something now that's one of my favorite things. Every single week we do this. For those of y'all that are new to us in the Birmingham audience, we call it the Grand Council. I got two other guys that I've just enjoyed getting to know them. They do what they do. They do it well. They're both radio show guys. And they come on with me, and we ping each other with questions, and we just kind of see what the different perspectives are on things that are hot topics in the news. So without further ado, let me call the roll. I know one of them is having to call in because he was mobile, but that would be WVNN's FM 106. I'm sorry, WVNN. I can't even say it anymore, Dale. FM 92.5, 770 AM, Huntsville Cumulus Broadcasting Guide, WVNN. Dale Jackson. Are you with us?
I am present and reporting for duty.
You are, and you're listening to me stumble over the fact that I can't even say my station IDs anymore. That's just awful.
You're a star now.
Is that the way it works? Hey, thanks for calling in, man. Appreciate you. All right. We also got on the clean feed connection here. Jeff Poor from FM Talk 106.5 down in the nether regions of our state. Jeffro Poor, are you here?
I am present.
You are present, and I appreciate it. All right, the Grand Council, Copper, I pronounce a quorum. You have a sound effect. Go ahead and hit it.
Assemble the Grand Council.
Ta-da! Ta-da-ta-da! All right, fellers. All right, listen, I'm going to go ahead. Now, Dale got to start last time, which really made him very happy, but I'm going to go ahead and go with Jeff first this time. So, Jeffro, first question, what you got?
The House District 2 outcome was justice served there.
You stole my question. I got to mark that off my list now. That was number one on my list. Yeah, back it up for the audience's benefit and explain what just happened.
So the Alabama Republican Party Steering Committee met earlier this week. They declined to hear a challenge from Kimberly Butler, and it wasn't because of the merits of her challenge at all. It was because her filing fee was 2 hours late, and from there they decided they would award the nomination for that race to Ben Harrison.
Well, I'll be honest with you. Yeah, so House District 2 has been kind of in flux now for a while, and she was like number 3 in the actual original rankings. She was fighting for the right to be in a runoff and asking for a second, primary runoff or election. But that's a super technicality, dude. You know what that tells me? They didn't want to deal with it, I guess. Was justice served? Maybe, because Ben Harrison was probably going to wind up being the winner. But still, you look at it and go, dang, late filing fee? That's what they ruled on? That sounds pretty ticky. Dale?
Being technically correct is the best kind of correct. So that's it.
That's your whole answer.
They win.
So Dale's not had a Red Bull yet today. We're listening to the moderated Dale Jackson. I don't know though. I mean, I look at it, I get it, but there's also a thing called equity where you look at it not equity like in the liberal sense, but where you look at it and say the equitable solution is why was it 2 hours late? They've known this was coming all this time, and that's what they're going with. I'm just looking at wow. What your own question, Jeff? What do you think?
They needed to rule on the merits of this. This could come up again.
Yeah.
There's no reason to have confidence in anything any of these county, local, yokel boards of registrars do, that you need to have something on the book, something to show that this is how we handled it in the past. This is the discussion we had. This was a weak way out. They should not have ruled on the technicality. They should have at least considered what the law says and made a legal argument here. So I'm disappointed in the steering committee for this cop-out.
You know what? You just swayed me. I totally agree. You're right. They did not set precedent. And as a lawyer, I'm shocked that I didn't think that through myself. But you're right. They did not set a precedent to guide future, except to tell people to file your filing fees on time. That's pretty. That does feel lame. All right. Listen. Moving on from that, Dale Jackson, I'm going to go with you next, brother. What kind of question you got?
Steve Marshall, he wants to have people sentenced in jail, and he wants them to stay there. Lots of people are complaining about the state of our prisons, and it's a little ridiculous for them to be making this argument. But is he going to be able to get support in the legislature to keep some of these bad guys in jail longer? I think he will be able to. What do you think?
I think I'll jump on that first. I think after the recent loss of a deputy by someone who was on work release of all things with a history of violent crime. You look at it and go, what the heck? They gave him quality good time. They credited him for good time served. Well, I got news. It wasn't good. He was in and out. He was a career recidivist, and now we have a deputy who's a father of 2 small kids and a husband, and he's gone. So I think there's going to be sentiment to go ahead and tighten things up, especially in the wake of what we're seeing with the arguments against these liberal DAs in other states. It is time to start tightening things up again. Jeff Rowe?
Can we stop letting Chris England, Beth Shelburne, these people who lose elections, who should have no standing here or no clout here, dominate this discussion? And when the legislature gets back, and you talk to these guys in the legislature, and those that aren't on judiciary, or they want to tighten this thing up. But for whatever reason, it's the trial lawyers that dominate some of these committees, or are the dominant donors for some of these guys that are on these committees. There just seems to be a very weak-kneed approach talking about criminal justice reform and sentencing reform. Nobody in the state really wants that except for a small minority of people. They are the outspoken people in this discussion, and the legislature needs to get behind Steve Marshall because he's the guy that's leading right now.
Well, he is, and he's actually the only one making sense on it right now, too. And I haven't heard anything out of the Ivey administration. Has anybody heard anything out of Governor Ivey's administration about whether it's time to get tougher on crime?
Nope, not a peep.
Has anyone heard from the Ivey administration about anything at all lately?
They're about drilling and not abortions on boats.
Oh, okay. Well, there's that. All right. Well, listen, I'm going to take the next question then. So Mike Rogers, following that up, it's a great segue. Mike Rogers, I think he was on your show, or was it on Yaffe's show? I've forgotten which one he was on most recently.
He was on the Yafster show.
Yafster. All right.
No. I know where you're going. He was on my show when he said this.
You wrote this up, didn't you, Jeff, in 1819?
Yeah,
okay.
This is from the Jeff Poor show.
Oh, well, let's make sure that FM Talk 106.5, Jeff Poor Show Daily had Mike Rogers. Congressman Mike Rogers came on and took some serious issue with the fact that the legislature is spending COVID relief money to help build the prisons. And basically he said that he was, I forgot what he said, like he was losing his mind, or he was
aggravated, and it makes you want to chew nails.
That's what it was. Well, if you got a congressman chewing nails at the state legislature and they're both Republicans, then somebody's really aggravated. I look at it and think, okay, I recognize we got to build the jails. We got to. There's no choice. If we're going to be tough on crime, we got to have a place to put them. And right now we've been at we're up to 185% capacity when I first got elected in 2010. We're down some to like 160% capacity. It's still awful. But I agree. I think ARPA, the relief funds, was questionable in terms of its usage. Your thoughts, Jeff, you first.
Yeah, I mean, I get where he's coming from here, but if you don't want the legislature spending money like that, then write a different law than they did at the congressional level. I mean, I don't know what his gripe is here. I don't think he did vote for ARPA, but he needs to, I guess, concede the fact that he doesn't really get a say in this. Maybe you disagree with what the legislature did, but they followed what the law put forth. So I think, I don't know, it's kind of sour grapes a little bit.
Well, it was technically allowable, but then he looks at it and goes, it was supposed to be for COVID relief, and that's kind of the point he was making in his the write-up that you did the other day, wasn't it?
That is it, and he's saying that next time we have a pandemic, if we do, we're not going to be better off because we use this money to build 2 mega prisons that should have been spent on rural broadband.
Dale Jackson, your thoughts, bud?
Well, he's right in what he's getting at, because it should have been spent on real things to deal with the pandemic. But they said, here's some money, go nuts. And every state said, okay. And that's exactly what they did.
Well, they did. And the interesting thing is, if you look at it, how much of that came back to the people? Next to nothing. They fueled government, and then they fueled government, and then they built some more government. And that's where the money has gone, is pretty much for government. Yeah. All right. Well, listen, fellas, let's go ahead and call that the moment there. First round of the Grand Council. Let's go ahead, Copper, and take a break. We'll do that. We'll come right back. Round 2 of the Grand Council. We ping each other with questions. We run the gamut. We see whether we agree or disagree, but at the end, we still love each other, whatever the case may be. Phil Williams, Rightside Radio. Solid conservative, just plain right. We'll be right back. We are back. Phil Williams, Rightside Radio, covering all of North Alabama. Solid conservative, just plain right. For those of y'all that are new to the show, we are doing this thing once a week we call the Grand Council. I've got my friends Dale Jackson, Jeff Poor. Dale Jackson from 770 AM, 92.5 FM, WVNN out of Huntsville. And then our own Jeff Poor from FM Talk 106.5 down in the coastal regions of our state. They both have their own shows. They both have their own opinions, and we just swap them back and forth and see what we got. And I think, Jeff Rowe, we are back to your question. What you got, man?
The Alabama Ethics Commission.
Oh, no.
Why does it exist? So yesterday, the Alabama Ethics Commission, it was determined they don't have to provide exculpatory evidence to the Attorney General if they uncover it in an investigation they are conducting. And you have a kind of an old prosecutor there, Tom Albritton, who wants to make it function more like an investigative agency. But I can't figure out where it really fits in the ecosystem. It doesn't really make sense to me. It never has. Can either one of y'all maybe enlighten me?
No.
No.
It's. I mean, so let me. So I haven't heard this. You're saying they've got a new policy. They will not provide exculpatory information to the AG. So if he's doing an investigation that parallels theirs, they won't trade information.
Right, the Alabama Supreme Court said they don't want to, and they took it to court, and the Alabama Supreme Court says that they have no obligation. So this is our taxpayer government at work, and we have these two conflicting, contradictory agencies that exist having a turf war right now, and the Supreme Court says, well, they do their thing, the AG's office does their thing, and they don't have to do anything at all for the AG's office.
I have not heard this. In fact, the rule of law should be the rule of law, period. For those who don't know, the Ethics Commission is supposed to be the body that oversees public officials and makes sure that they stay in line, so to speak. And I can tell you any number of times if something was happening, I might have to write a letter to the Ethics Commission and say, hey, by the way, I have a person that I'm working with over here as a lawyer. I want to make sure that's not an ethics violation, and they would send me back something that says do or don't. But then again, they can also they have arrest authority. They have subpoena authority. They can be an investigative body that finds someone guilty and send them to jail. But I've never heard that they wouldn't work with the AG. What a heck of a thing. Dale, chime in.
Well, one of the things that I always am amused by with the Ethics Commission is people would ask them for opinions, and like you said, sometimes they'll respond, sometimes they don't. Sometimes they'll give an opinion, and that opinion isn't something that can keep them from getting in trouble for doing the thing they said they could do. It's messed up, and Jeff just lays out yet another way that commission is messed up. It doesn't have obligations. It has abilities, and I think it needs to be fine-tuned. But every time they try to fine-tune it, you get knuckleheads like Jeff Poor's best friends, Josh Moon and Kyle Whitmire, are like, oh, they're trying to control the ethics commissions so they can rape the state treasury and all this other stuff. And we never get anywhere. They need to change it. It's not working as it's supposed to.
And here's the thing, Dale. Those guys at APR, Britt and Moon, they don't think the Ethics Commission, they don't know why it functions either. They complain about it all the time. Like, if you wanted to find, like, where Phil Williams, Dale Jackson, Josh Moon, and Bill Britt all agree on something, what's the point of this agency?
Okay, first of all, don't ever put me in the same position of saying that I agree with anything that Bill Britt and Josh Moon said.
Well,
never,
do you or do you not?
Never, ever in a million. I refuse to answer that question on the basis it's going to taint my life if I say that I agree with anything those guys said.
But is it true or not?
Well, I mean, in this particular case, I have to look at it. I mean, I think the Ethics Commission certainly has a place, but I'm baffled by this whole thing about not providing investigatory information. What is it? Does the AGs have even subpoena authority? Can the AG subpoena? I would think so. They can subpoena the Ethics Commission and say, give us your stuff. But you're saying they just won't have a handshake deal? They won't share information back and forth?
No. Supreme Court says they have no obligation, no legal
no obligation.
I just
wow.
texted you the story if you want to check it out. But that's as of yesterday. And I can't figure out what's the point then? Why do we have this agency if they're not going to? There's a turf war between Albritton and Marshall's going on here, and it's just not good for the taxpayer. I don't think.
No, wow. All right. I'll look that one over, bro. I have not seen that yet. But you just surprised me with a new one. Dale Jackson, your question, Bubba. What you got?
All right. So I have a question here that may not be as interesting as everything else that we've been talking about here, but
you're going to ask it anyway.
I am going to just ask it anyway. I want to talk about the national stage here for a second. Is Joe Biden truly going to continue sending immigrants to Alabama in the middle of the night? Well, the media pretends that immigrants don't come to Alabama in the middle of the night.
Yes. As long as he can get away with it, he will in the dark of night. Mayorkas is going to keep loading planes under the sanction of Joe Biden and sending them wherever he feels like it, because right now nobody can stop him from doing it. And Congress is ineffectual and still controlled by Democrats. So yeah, I mean, it's the only way it's going to stop, in my opinion, is if the American public has enough of a voice to say stop the madness. I mean, that's what happened with parents going to school board meetings. That's what happened with situations like recall votes now for Gascon, the DA, going on out in California. It's going to take people getting active and getting ugly, because right now the political powers are not going to stop it. Jeff?
You're right. This isn't going to stop it. And you know what would happen, guys, if the federal government stopped busing or flying these immigrants to Alabama in the middle of the night? The Tyson's chicken plant or whatever, a farm out there, they would be the ones to bring these migrants to Alabama. So, it should be aided and abetted by the federal government. I agree, but it's Democratic administration. That's what's going on. But until you shut down the border or you de-incentivize migration, this is going to be a persistent problem.
Well, it is made worse by policies that just leave the border. But we have no border. It's ridiculous. I mean,
well, my bigger question here is really, like, we know this is happening. The reporting we see, it makes it clear, and our friends in the press are like, no, it's not happening, even though they quote the press person at the Birmingham airport who says, "Oh yeah, ICE flies charters in here all the time," and they're still pretending that it's like it's a made up story.
They're out for blood against Yellowhammer. It's the bizarrest thing, because you could be open minded about Dylan Smith's reporting and whatever you think of it, but they're not open minded at all. They rejected it like right out.
Oh, it was a derisive, caustic article. Yeah, that was a snippety article. I mean, it was not even. It was just basically let's bash Yellowhammer. Oh no, by the way, we didn't like his article. That's what it basically was.
Yeah, I agree with that.
Hey, last question. 2.5 minutes to go here. I think I've asked this the last couple of weeks in a row, but I'm going to ask it again. Is the legislature planning to weaken Alabama's current pro-life laws, some of the strictest in the nation, but it makes us a very pro-life state? I had Arthur Orr on my show. I think one of y'all did too most recently. And here's a leader of the Republican caucus who's very pro-life, said, hey, maybe, we don't know. Maybe we'll have to see. What do our constituents want? And I was a little taken aback by that. It sounded like there's talk of doing something to weaken our current laws. Your thoughts? Jeff, you first.
I think its point was this, though. There's unintended consequences from every law, and he wants to wait and see. I think we're at least 5 years away. It probably won't happen until the quadrennium after next. But if you do have something happen and the public gets some buy-in here, then I totally could see the legislature kind of getting blown in the wind wherever that takes them and putting something out there, and the governor, whoever it may be at the time, going along with it.
Dale?
I don't think so. I don't think it happens. I think what happens is there's a lot of talk about it to make it appear that they are giving it a look. But I think that at the end of the day, they don't go down that path at all. Because, I mean, any step in any direction away from where they are right now is a pro-choice step, and they ain't taking that.
I tend to agree with Dale on this one. I still think it's unlikely that it's going to happen, but nonetheless. Fellas, I appreciate you. Dale, thanks for rushing to get in. I know you had some scheduling conflicts. Folks,
did not inconvenience myself one bit.
All right. Appreciate you guys both. Hey, folks, that's the Grand Council. We do it once a week on Thursdays. And those of y'all that are in the Birmingham market, we will see you tomorrow. Huntsville, we're staying on. Don't go away. Phil Williams, Rightside Radio. We'll be right back.
You're listening live to Rightside Radio with Phil Williams. It's hard to go wrong when you're on the right side. Rightside Radio. Solid, conservative, and just plain right.
Alabama's syndicated news talk leader, Rightside Radio. Phil Williams here, Rightside Studios, local, state, national, all the issues. We cover them, man. We cover them, and we are solid, conservative, and just plain right. All right, well, listen, I'm going to switch gears for you. I spent some time talking about fielding the force. Had my friend Colonel Jim Hawkins on to talk about that a bit. We also spent some time with the Grand Council, just pinging each other on questions that are current in the, in the conservative policy arena. What do we think? What do they think? What do we all think? Love that. Number 2 on the Triple Dipper is where I'm going now, though. Number 2 on the Triple Dipper, I'm just basically calling it who's on Biden's team. Who's on Biden's team? What are we doing here, Phil? Why are we doing that? Because it's important. Think about this. You got a football team, right? You got the quarterback. Let's pick one. Tom Brady. Tom Brady, one of the greatest quarterbacks ever in the history of the NFL. Tom Brady. If you put Tom Brady on a team that has, no ability to block and tackle, you put Tom Brady on a team that doesn't have any decent running backs, no decent receivers. The defensive secondary can't do a thing to get him back on the field. The linebackers don't know their role. Nobody can run a stunt. Nobody can do anything. If Tom Brady is the greatest quarterback ever, he still has to have a good team. It has to be a robust team. And everybody has to be the right choice for their particular role. I've known some guys that were professional athletes, and it's an amazing array of skill sets when you see them get up there. But every one of them has their own niche. Every once in a while, you'll find a crossover player, somebody who in college played offense and they moved to defense, or you might see that in the line. But you also sometimes you see somebody who was in the secondaries now a receiver, or vice versa. But for the most part, they have their niche, and they're good at it. And there's a ton that goes into the recruiting and the training and making sure that you have what is necessary to build the right team. All right, enough opining on teams, Phil. We get it. What I'm saying is this. It's no different anywhere else, whether it be in the corporate boardroom, or on the shop floor, or in the White House. You got to have the right team. And right now, we got a wacky team in the Biden administration. And I don't mean like a little bit. I mean like this is a bunch of yahoos. And I look at them every once in a while and I think, well, they got a neat resume. They've done some things, but what have they done with those things? Well, it's like the Biden administration said, how many activists can we pick? What can we do to check the block? Well, see, this is the way liberals work. Liberals work on the notion that if you go with what they call intersectionalities, if you look at demographics only, then you do things like, pick a Supreme Court justice, and the very first criteria is not whether or not they are strong in the realm of jurisprudence. You have to look at them based on their skin color and gender. Because it's important to break the glass ceiling. It's important that you hit things from a demographic perspective. Well, that can only go so long before you wind up really botching things. And right now, y'all, what we're seeing nationwide, the things that we're having to put up with as the constituents of these people, they are botching things. And not a little bit. Let me tell you what got my attention on this. And by the way, this one I know is not a cabinet level position, but it's an important position. And I go ahead and just challenge you when I say their names. If you're sitting in a place where you can even pull them up on your smartphone, then do it. Because, wow. All right, here's the first one. What got me started on this morning, when I began looking at, putting together the Triple Dipper, what topics are we going to do? I came across this story on the National Pulse, dated 2 days ago, July 12th. Exclusive, it says. Biden's Energy Department drag queen gets top secret Q clearance alongside six-figure government salary. Okay. Let me go back to that one and process that with you for a minute, because that particular headline is like got like layers in it. Exclusive to the National Pulse. You ready? Biden's Energy Department drag queen, there's the first segment, gets top secret Q clearance, there's the next segment, alongside a six-figure government salary. Ooh. Okay, here's the deal. Look up this person if you get a chance. Sam Brinton. Brinton. Because I'm pretty sure what you're going to find are pictures of someone who you would never think should get a security clearance of this level. And you also wonder, how in God's name did you get hired? What was the screening process? Let me tell you something. I for years maintained a very high level security clearance. I had a TSSCI clearance, and when you have those level clearances, you have to have like periodic reinvestigations. They actually come, they send somebody to your office or wherever you are. You know, they present their badge, they sit down with you, they go and interview your friends, and these periodic reinvestigations are thorough. Not to mention the one that you had to go through to get the clearance in the first place. Clearances should not be handed out like candy. They should not come just merely because you were appointed to some position because somebody needed to check a block and make sure they hired the right demographic. Well, we're looking at a guy right now who it recently was brought out that Samuel Brinton is a drag queen, an LGBTQ activist who has lectured on kink at college campuses and participated in interviews about fetish role play. Okay, I just said a lot of things that probably offended a few people, but that's who we're talking about. He is, and when you see the pictures, when you look him up online, you'll know. So a high-level So here we go. You ready? A high-level hire at the Department of Energy's Office of Nuclear Energy who's passed as a drag queen and defender of underage gay prostitution sites has stirred controversy and is earning a salary in the top 1% of all government employees, according to documents obtained by the National Pulse. They did a FOIA request, Freedom of Information Act request, and it reveals that Sam Brinton's taxpayer-funded salary is $178,000 a year. It also says that he just recently received his top secret Q clearance, they call it, in the Department of Energy. Don't think for a second the Department of Energy doesn't have national security issues built into it, because it does. And the designation top secret in this particular case is, quote, basically applies to information that, quote, the unauthorized disclosure of which reasonably could be expected to cause exceptionally grave damage to national security. Let me tell you something. One of the things that they look for when you take on these clearances, especially at the TS level, is whether or not you have the ability to be compromised. When foreign agents look for the ability to compromise someone, they look for roles in their life that they can, sort of pluck at. Is this person in financial disarray? Do they have a tendency to hang out in certain types of bars? Do they engage in extramarital affairs? Are they, vulnerable in other? This guy's vulnerable on so many levels. How does he get a TS clearance in the first place? If that's not a compromisable individual, I don't know what is. And yet, go look at his picture, Sam Brinton. He's so proud. He's so proud to be in the position he's in. Because why? It checked a block. Well, who else is on the Biden team? That's what it got me to thinking about. Who else is on the Biden team? Well, I'm going to run down a few of these with you, and they're important. That guy, Sam Brinton, he may not be a cabinet-level position, but he works for the cabinet-level position, direct under the Secretary of Energy, Jennifer Granholm, who I'll talk about in a moment. But let me tell you about this one. AmericanMilitaryNews.com, dated yesterday. The U.S. Senate confirms Biden's ATF nominee who has never owned a gun. How is that a thing? How is that a thing? On Tuesday, the Senate confirmed Stephen Dettelbach, President Joe Biden's second choice to lead the Bureau of Alcohol, Tobacco, and Firearms, which enforces the nation's gun laws, even after the nominee admitted he's never even owned a gun. Now, gun ownership is not a mandate, obviously, but you would sort of think if a guy's going to be in a position to enforce gun laws, maybe he owns or at least uses firearms occasionally? No. It was a 48-46 vote. You know why it was 48-46? Because some of the usual suspects, Susan Collins, Republican, and Rob Portman, Republican, joined 46 Democrats to approve Dettelbach's nomination. In June, Dettelbach confirmed he had never even owned a gun, had never been issued one in a professional capacity, even though he had served as a career prosecutor. He joined the Department of Justice's Civil Rights Division in 1992. Oh, okay. By the way, that's the activist division of the Department of Justice. And as the director of the ATF, Dettelbach's responsibilities will include enforcing federal gun laws and regulations. And in recent years, the ATF has repeatedly found itself in the position of reviewing the legality of new firearms and firearms parts, things like bump stocks and specialized triggers and pistol braces, stuff like that. Well, the NRA, the Firearms Policy Coalition, and some of the others who support gun rights say this is an absolute disaster to put a guy like this. He's an activist. He's an anti-gun activist, they say, who is now in charge of the ATF. Classic. Just wanted you to know who's on the team. I got more of these. What about Alejandro Mayorkas? What did he do before he took over ICE and CBP as Department of the Homeland Security Secretary? What about Rachel Levine? Oh, my gosh. What about Jennifer Granholm, U.S. Energy Secretary? They go down the list. I'm telling you. Copper, take me to a break while I catch my breath. We'll come back and talk about who's on Biden's team. You need to know this. When you take it into its totality, when you look at the big picture, and you realize the team he assembled, it goes way beyond the pale. It's not like one or two bad picks. It's like they decided, let's have a losing team and make it as bad as possible. How many activists can you cram in one room? Phil Williams, Rightside Radio. Y'all stay tuned. We got plenty more. We'll be right back. Hey folks, Phil Williams here. This audience has quickly made Rightside Radio one of the most popular daily shows in North Alabama. We are back. Phil Williams, Rightside Radio, covering all of North Alabama, solid, conservative, and just plain right. Hey, I got somebody held on the phones there during the break, and I certainly appreciate the patience. So let me just go grab that line 5. Chris from Hartselle. Hey, Chris, how you doing today?
Hey, I'm good. I appreciate you taking my call.
Sure.
One of the things I just wanted to say was about your last segment on Sam Brenton.
Yeah.
As soon as I saw that story break, I saw it on LinkedIn, plastered all over LinkedIn, how proud he was of his new position. I'll give the person this. Notice I said the person because I'm not sure how I'm supposed to refer to the Energy Secretary.
Yeah.
But he's an MIT grad. He's probably got a brilliant mind when it comes to nuclear energy, and he's probably a good pick for the position. But let me just say this. For somebody who's had a security clearance in the federal government for 30-plus years, it is my job to raise the question when I see something that is questionable or something that brings bad interest and taste to the federal government based on somebody's practices, beliefs, or you name it. Now, all you got to do is do a Google search, and anybody in their right mind would question this individual's off-duty practices, I guess you could say. So maybe it's the world we live in. It's what we're faced with, and we deal with it. But like you said, that troubles me to no end.
Yeah, it does me too, because the qualifications for a security clearance, they're not just job related, they're lifestyle related. You can be a compromised individual based more on your lifestyle than your job resume.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, man. Well, you're spot on, Chris, and appreciate it. And I'm glad somebody else is out there paying attention. This guy, I mean, you're right. He might be a brilliant mind, but it's a troubled mind, and it's ripe for disaster. So we'll see how it goes.
Yeah, it is. It just opens a can of worms. That's all I'm gonna say.
All right, man. Appreciate the call. Thanks for being in the audience. We appreciate you. All right, listen. Let me move on here. Who else is on Biden's team? Well, we got a whole just a basket of wahoos here. So Boomer's laughing. A basket of wahoos, Boomer. I think I just coined that one. But yeah, let's pick one. I don't know. Who else you got, Phil? Oh gosh, how about Alejandro Mayorkas? Alejandro Mayorkas, the Secretary of Department of Homeland Security. the Department of Homeland No Security. Well, a story was written about him in January of 2021 when he was pending appointment. And he got appointed. Obviously, he was confirmed by the U.S. Senate. But while the nation might have been keeping an eye on him, you know, it was also kind of just looking aside, like this one kind of snuck in under some radars. But the question became, right after he got confirmed, whether or not he would act with integrity and honor in following his oath to protect and uphold the defense or the Constitution of the United States and only propose, accept, and execute immigration policies that put the interest of American workers first. I read all that from an article I pulled off of NumbersUSA.com. NumbersUSA.com. The headline in January of 2021 was, "Who is Alejandro Mayorkas? Biden's troubling pick to lead DHS." Troubling? Oh yeah, it's troubling. Now let me just go ahead and say, this article was prescient at its time, and it is revelatory in the aftermath. We're looking right now at a guy who literally took the job to not do the job. That's what we're seeing. We're going to wind up going to a break here in just a minute, so I'll probably hold some of this till I get back. But I'm just going to tell you, between that one, between Rachel Levin being so excited to wear the 4-star uniform of an admiral every day, between Jennifer Granholm being the U.S. Energy Secretary and laughing when she's asked what she's going to do about gas prices because she's more into renewables and, you know, green energy. When looking at who was picked to be the Department of Education head in Miguel Cardona, what you're seeing here are a series of picks that are nothing but literally activists being put into a room. It is a basket full of wahoos. And man, I'm going to tell you right now, it ain't going well. Because you know what? It matters who you put on your team. We'll come back with more of this when we get back. Phil Williams, Rightside Radio. Solid, conservative, and just plain right. We are back. Phil Williams, Rightside Radio. Solid conservative, just plain right. Covering all of North Alabama, up into Tennessee, over into Georgia, and left side over into Mississippi. Yep. Listen, folks, I'm just going to tell you right now, if you have not checked out Just Love Coffee Cafe, let me just pause here before I go on with the Triple Dipper and just tell you. Just Love Coffee Cafe is one of those stops you've got to make. I mean, it doesn't matter whether it's breakfast, lunch, or dinner, or just a good solid snack in the afternoon, or maybe you just need to pick me up in midday. I'm just telling you, Just Love Coffee Cafe, 2 locations, one on Hughes Road in Madison, the other on South Memorial Parkway in Huntsville. I've been to both locations. I love both locations, and I'm just going to tell you right now, what a great place to hang out, meet friends, use their Wi-Fi if you want to, but then the food, man, listen, they got wraps, they got sandwiches, they got salads, and they got breakfast you can have for dinner. And that's one of my favorites, breakfast for dinner. But you can get a womlet, which is a big, fat omelet that they cook in a waffle iron, believe it or not. But they also have waffles. They have, biscuits. They have, anyway, good food. And the coffee, oh yeah, award-winning. Check it out, Just Love Coffee Cafe, 2 locations. One on Hughes Road in Madison out towards City Hall. The other one on South Memorial Parkway in Huntsville. All right, listen, I'm moving back to the Triple Dipper, but I'm going to go ahead and take those calls. You want to call in? I'd love to hear from you. 866-494-9866. It's go-home time. Some of y'all listening in the car, just be careful on the roads. But yeah, you want to talk about anything we've talked about today, call on in. Tell me what your thoughts are. I'd love to hear your thoughts, too, on these activists that are part of the Biden administration. I mean, do they have any experience at all that qualifies them? Maybe. But I'm pretty sure they were also picked because of who they are in terms of a check the box on demographics kind of thing. I got a caller on line 3. I'll go ahead and grab it right now. Don from Athens. Hey, Don, Phil Williams, how you doing today?
Hey, Phil, doing pretty good today. I was just telling Copper, I guess, that was reading an article on Daily Wire that talked directly about their business experience, and the median, it was looking at the top 68 positions. So this is, senior folks. The median years of business experience is literally 0. Now, the average is about 2.4, but, of course, that's still pretty low. But you've got Joe Biden, Kamala Harris, most of the top officials had literally 0 business experience. So no wonder the economy's in shambles.
Wow. They've never had to write a paycheck. They've never had to balance the books. They've never had to do anything other than suck down taxpayer dollars and get the guaranteed government paycheck themselves. That's about it.
Yeah, and you can compare that to the Trump administration. You had Trump with over 45 years, Steve Mnuchin, Treasury guy, who was like 25 years, Betsy DeVos, Education Secretary, 23 years, and there was somebody, I forget the Commerce Secretary, but he had, 25 or 30 years or so, and of course many others. But, yeah, when you've never run anything, of course, now you look at Congress, too, you probably know this better than I, and the number of people with military experience. I'm a retired veteran, but that's on the decline as well. Or was, at least, maybe until recently. But that was on the decline, and I think that's a problem as well.
I totally agree, man. Hey, Don, thanks for the call. Thanks for your service, too, by the way. We appreciate you being a part of the audience.
Hey, thanks for yours.
All right, bud. Thank you. Wow. Oh, man, see, that's exactly right. I mean, it's so obvious that the criteria for selection to top cabinet level and government running positions in the Biden administration is exponentially different than what we saw in the Trump administration. And I look at that and think, who's running the HR department that says, okay, time to find the next person to run before the Senate for confirmation? I mean, look at some of these wahoos. I called them a whole basket of wahoos a while ago. That's what we got. We got some folks up there carrying security clearances that if they had not been appointed to a position, they would not qualify for a security clearance. Well, let's talk about the head of the Department of Homeland Security, Alejandro Mayorkas. So Mayorkas himself is an immigrant. That makes it interesting. I understand he could bring a personal perspective. Maybe he does. He's a Cuban immigrant. As an infant, he and his family brought him here. They fled Cuba to Los Angeles as refugees. Okay. Got his degree from UCal Berkeley. Oh, Lord. Why do I keep hearing about UCal Berkeley lately? And a law degree from Loyola. Spent 9 years as a prosecutor, was the youngest U.S. attorney in the country under President Bill Clinton. overseeing the prosecution of, white-collar crimes and things like that. Okay, good on him, glad. But then things began to go where they are now. So, yeah, in 2009, he moved to Obama's Department of Homeland Security. He was an undersecretary, I believe, and he made his first real impact as the architect of the disastrous DACA program, the Deferred Action for Childhood Arrivals program under Obama. It's the one that gave amnesty to thousands of illegal aliens that were residing in the country through deportation protections, work permit extensions, pathways to citizenship, all the usual things that we refer to as amnesty. He was the architect of that plan. You got to know that when that happens, and it happens, by the way, when Vice President Joe Biden was there, and then President Biden comes in and reaches back for him and brings him in now as the head of DHS, you got to know he knew that he was putting someone in place who was an amnesty guy. He knew that he was putting someone in place who open border activists were literally saying they really believed that he was their best option for expanding the DACA program and getting things, to the point where we could see the floods that we're seeing now. So when Mayorkas says, hey, everything's fine, the border's A-OK, the border is secure, what does secure mean to you, Secretary Mayorkas? And oh, by the way, don't think that when they put together this basket of wahoos, they didn't know exactly who they were getting when they got him. He was also there as the Undersecretary of DHS in the Obama administration when they had that first big surge of alien children and families between 2014 and 2015. And it was a real predictable outcome of the DACA program he had helped put together. And then, oh, by the way, he was involved in a scandal. So the EB-5 visa scandal at the Department of Homeland Security, what happened here was he was caught. And it was an IG inspection that determined that he did, in fact, provide undue influence to make sure that visas were being extended to foreigners who invested, large amounts of money in certain U.S. business ventures. Yeah. In other words, nearly 80% of those applications came from China. Oh, really? So we now have the Department of Homeland Security, the secretary of that entire department that oversees Customs and Border Patrol and ICE and the Coast Guard. He is someone who has, in the past, shown a propensity to push for amnesty. He is someone in the past who has coordinated with Chinese authorities to try and expedite visas for people who were investing certain amounts of money in certain companies. That's who's your Department of Homeland Security secretary in that basket of wahoos. All right, what else have I got here? Rachel Levine. I can hardly even talk about this one. This one's just, I just look at this one and I think, that's just a troubled individual. You almost feel bad pointing things out because you feel like you're just being mean. But nonetheless, that's who is the Assistant Secretary for Health. And, oh, by the way, is extremely proud of the fact that that he has, been appointed as the first transgender Assistant Secretary for Health. And yay, and gets to wear a uniform, yay, which he wears the dress version of the uniform, yay. But this is who has been on the front lines advocating for what he calls the value and importance of gender-affirming care for minors. A firm believer that we should allow for the alteration of children's bodies because they're going through gender dysphoria. And that's who has been appointed by the Biden administration to be on that team. Who else have we got in this stack? Pray tell, Phil, how many more wahoos can you fit in that basket? Well, let me just tell you. Then there's Jennifer Granholm, U.S. Energy Secretary. Now, you may recall, not so long ago when gas prices were spiking, Jennifer Granholm was asked on a news interview, Secretary Granholm, what are you going to do about gas prices? Is there a plan? And she just laughed. This is a Secretary of Energy who probably hasn't put gas in her own car in God knows how long, who probably has a driver that just makes sure that he pulls up at the front and she gets in and she gets taken wherever she wants to go. No worries. Well, When she was being tapped for the office back in December of 2020, an organization called Recharge News wrote an article about her. They pointed out that she has long been a strong advocate for renewable energies, that she's an advocate, in her own words, for clean energy. She's a green energy person. She came in as a green energy person. Not only that, she was the professor of energy and public policy at, once again, UCal Berkeley, where she supported the energy transition for the U.S. auto sector. She was also the architect of the controversial 2015 Clean Power Plan that assigned each state an individual goal for reducing their CO2 emissions, and that's who's in charge of the energy sector. Is it any wonder, then, that we're looking at policies being foisted upon the people of this nation that are causing pain at the pump, pain to heat your house in the wintertime, the inability then to also see food on the table for some people because the cost of food is going through the roof, in large part because of the fact that we have a energy problem causing the gas prices to ship it from farm to market going way up because they hired an activist, someone who laughs when you ask her about gas prices and then takes it real serious when she wants to talk about the green energy sector in the automobile industry. The architect of the Clean Power Plan that has done nothing for us except make things more expensive. All right, tell you what, Copper, I got a little more on this, but let's go ahead and take a break. We'll come back. I might be able to finish this thing up. Because, folks, who's on Biden's team matters. You know why? Because they make the decisions that affect you and I. And they're a bunch of wahoos, most of whom shouldn't even be given a job scooping ice cream at the Baskin-Robbins, much less being given a government security clearance. That's how I feel about it. You're welcome to call in, 866-494-9866. Love to hear your thoughts. Phil Williams, Rightside Radio. We'll be right back. We are back. Phil Williams, Rightside Radio, covering all of North Alabama, solid, conservative, and just plain right. By the way, I love it when listeners tag me in different places. A guy that follows me on Twitter, by the way, you can follow me on Twitter, at @SenPhilWilliams. That's SEN, @SenPhilWilliams. Vision Leader just sent me one. Epoch Times reports this afternoon that we were talking about the fielding the force was number one in the Triple Dipper. Epoch Times reports the U.S. military cannot fulfill its national defense strategies because of force cuts. That's a big deal. Yep, we'll see how that plays out. I got somebody that held on during the break, and I appreciate that. Oh, yeah, it's Brian from Huntsville. Hey, Brian, how you doing today, man?
Hoo-ah.
Hoo-ah to
and,
you. What you
I
got?
want to mention
Yeah.
Joe Biden's team with him as president. You mentioned something about stunt. That's the one defensive play they know. They play it very well.
They play the stunt. Yeah, they got to. Stunt the linebackers. Do what you can. Oh, my gosh.
Now all these people that are in office that are green, especially the last one you talked about, have taken away so much. You remember North Texas last winter.
Oh, yeah.
Everything going green, and they couldn't keep up. Same thing in the summer. Some places are having brownouts and that kind of thing because we cannot support them on fossil fuels. And these are the same idiots that wanted us to buy electric cars and plug them into the grid.
Yeah. Yeah. Not only that, too, Brian, part of what galls me, too, is they're determined to make the U.S. military go green, and I have no idea how they're going to sustain the force on a battlefield with, renewable sources of fueling, because what it takes to just get a car charged back up. Can you imagine what it takes to charge up a Humvee or a tank?
And I'm waiting to see what they do about air-to-air refueling. Is they're going to be a big plane with batteries on it that the other one plugs into?
I hadn't even thought of that.
Have a good one, sir.
I went Army all the way, and he went Air Force. I get it. All right. Hey, Brian, thanks so much. Yeah, listen, folks, it boggles the mind, and I feel like too often on the show I have to say that it boggles the mind. I mean, how do we see this level of activism within one administration? I get it. You're gonna have folks sometimes, and they're gonna come in with more of an agenda. They're gonna try and push things through, and every once in a while they're gonna be told, "Hey, man, curb it a little bit. Hey, you, tell her to calm down." No, activism is the order of the day on this team. It matters who's on the team. Speaking of team, let me look at this one. Education Secretary Miguel Cardona. Education Secretary Miguel Cardona, well, you know what? He was a bit of a blank slate. In fact, I'm reading an article from January of 2021 where it literally said that he had a bit of a blank slate. When he came in for his confirmation, there wasn't much to see. But then again, maybe that should concern you too. Secretary of Education, not much experience. He'd been a classroom teacher, he'd been a principal, and he had been an assistant superintendent in a kind of small district in Connecticut. And then he did work for 18 months as the head of Connecticut's education agency. Okay, so he stepped up into a statewide leadership role for a year and a half. But guess what? Here's what caught my eye. The teachers union loved him, and the National Education Association welcomed his appointment, and with open arms, oh, by the way. The dispatch here points out that he was a relative novice with no national experience and only a short stint as the head of Connecticut's education bureaucracy. But his deputy will be Cindy Martin, the superintendent of San Diego's Unified School District, a longtime educator who has never worked at the state or federal level. What? What the heck? Is this not an important position? Oh, wait a minute. Speaking of teams, look who they surrounded him with. So you get a guy and his assistant, both of whom have limited experience, but they're liberal, and the teachers union loves them. And then the teachers union supplies a senior advisor for policy and planning named Donna Harris Akins, as well as a principal deputy general counsel named Emma Lehaney. Oh, okay, so the teachers union is propping him up with their people. Aha, I say to you. Suzanne Goldberg, also a founding director of Columbia Law School's Sexuality and Gender Law Clinic, was also named to a senior position in the Office of Civil Rights at the Department of Education. Other appointments came from the Elizabeth Warren campaign and for state-based left-wing advocacy organizations. In short, the article says, this is not a staffing chart that looks like centrist. It is not at all. It is like they built a team. They found a hollow shell of a guy, put him in charge, and then built a team around him. And oh, by the way, in January of this year, he was called upon to resign because it turned out that Miguel Cardona, whose entire office is staffed by the teachers union, it was found out that, when that controversial letter came from the National School Board Association that compared, protesting parents to domestic terrorists, that it was him working with the National School Board Association and seeking that letter. He solicited that letter from them, and members of Congress have called up him to resign. Well, I end with one of my favorite, Pete Buttigieg. Buttigieg is, very proud of the fact that he and his partner adopted twins. In the midst of the supply chain crisis, the new Department of Transportation Secretary, Pete Buttigieg, went on a 2-month paternity leave while the nation reeled with a supply chain crisis that fell under his desk. That's who we've got, folks. That's who's in the basket of wahoos. It matters who's on the team. I'll tell you what, I got a great team right here at Rightside Radio, and we will be back tomorrow at 2 o'clock. Y'all stay tuned. Coming up next, you got the great one, Mark Levin, Phil Williams, Rightside Radio, blanketing North Alabama, solid, conservative, and just plain right. Y'all have a great night.